figures. Wind energy is the cheapest, most easily accessible and most developed form of renewable energy available to Ireland. But where to locate these wind farms? The impact on the scenic west of Ireland will greatly affect tourism. There's poor grid infrastructure and low energy demands. There are limitations on wind farm development on the east coast due to high population density, but there is high demand and good infrastructure. We must find the middle ground which meets the needs of wind farm development and the concern of local communities. Energy is currently cheap but will no doubt rise in future. We must harness this power now and make the big switch to wind energy. I conclude with this question: why can't wind energy be both a blot on the landscape and the future? Thank you very much.
The old order changeth, yielding place to new. When I was a child, I accepted the world as it was: open fires, oil lamps, candles, carrying water from the well and so on. Life was simple but yet hard. Meal times meant planning ahead. The fire had to be lit, water boiled, food cooked, and all at a pace which matched the pace of life. All this changed one day when the man came to dig the holes and erect poles for their raw material. As a beekeeper, I can say that when the honeybees visit a flower to gather nectar, it does not cause any damage to it. The bee only adds to the flower by carrying pollen grains from other plants to it, so that the plant can produce offspring. The reward for this process is a nectar supplied to the honeybee. The same can be said of the wind turbine. They cause no harm to the environment since they consume wind and in return produce electricity.
Wind energy, a blot on the landscape or the future? Well, it really depends on the landscape you're talking about. If you're talking about the economic landscape of Ireland, that bleak and desolate place, a wind farm looks like a beacon of hope, offering us salvation from the woes we find ourselves in. And I'll give you 3 reasons for that. As a country, we're broke. And when you're broke, you've got to look around and see what have you got left that you can use. We are blessed to be living where we are, in a well-resourced, from a wind point of view, place. We have the Atlantic bringing the wind to us, nothing in the way, a massive wind generation project. So now the wind farm is no longer just a power generation station. It's a monument to the imagination and the industry of a people. So to conclude, wind energy is essential in the landscape, to our well-being and to our very survival when fuel prices increase. Without wind energy, there may be no landscape. There may be no future. And if there's no future, who will there be to admire the landscape? Good night and fair winds.
So Ireland's land mass is around 2% of the total EU land mass, yet Ireland has 6% of EU wind resources, one of the world's richest sources of wind energy potential. Ireland currently imports over 90% of its energy needs at a cost of over 6 billion per year. And most of that is fossil fuels. Now, the fossil fuel era can only be regarded as a useful but very brief period in human history. So factors currently driving change in Ireland include the interrelation on the landscape, barriers and obstacles to implementation of sustainable policy, like the 887 MUA statutes, continue to grow. Ireland's biggest export is people. The economy is characterised by stagnant economic growth with small pockets of regional growth alongside uneven development.
1 minute.
There is increase in greenhouse gases and environmental degradation. There are vested interests in governance and a lack of trust reduced to civic engagement.
86% of all global energy comes from coal, oil and gas. Our grandchildren will live to see it depleted. Then there are the anxieties of CO2, climate change and eco-stability to consider. However, a cubic kilometre of air weighs 1.2 million tonnes, and moving restlessly over our heads, those of the current crop of 300 expensive tonnes of wind turbines which cannot access it, carries consumed globally every second. Enabling an economic carbon-free liquid fuel using only air and water in a new patented low-pressure solid-state process which will power all transport
15
fleets
seconds.
and variation in electrical demand. Or harmlessly overflying the Athabascan tar sands and other wilderness energy sources, we can keep our former friends, coal and oil, the real blots on the landscape, in the ground, and the currently beautiful, engineered, tall, efficient, elegant wind turbines may become, like the old clipper ships, a favourite on pictorial calendars because they will have vanished from our landscape. Thank you very much.
According to EirGrid's latest generation adequacy report, this is by no means unachievable. And so it shouldn't be. Ireland's location in the upper mid-latitudes of the eastern Atlantic Ocean bestows us with perhaps the greatest wind resource in Europe. You may hear opposing views today, but public perception is quite positive regarding wind farms. SEI commissioned a study in 2002 in which 84% of those questioned believed that wind energy is a positive development, and crucially 77% were amenable to having a wind farm in their own locality. We issued guidelines for wind farm developments with special reference to peatlands. But despite this, the Ballincollig slide of August 2008 is the fourth such event directly attributed to wind farm construction. Wind energy has enormous potential and is deserving of its place in our future energy strategy. However, it is vital that the sites are carefully assessed so that we minimise disruption to the natural functioning of peatland ecosystems. It would be folly to lose one of our greatest natural resources in our rush to develop another. Thank you.
So cheaper industry, cheaper electricity would obviously be a cheaper cost to business.
Okay.
And three, none of the speakers mentioned about the European Union policy on actually on climate change. Will there be wind in the future? There was no research mentioned about that.
Friends, we have a result. First of all our contributors are winners. That's the important thing to say in terms of the contribution, the issues and the ideas that they have raised. But the judges have selected 3 people. I will call the person who is in third position first in name, and that's James Maher. And next is Cormac O'Reilly. Right there. And the winner is Colm O'Lee.
Great, thanks to the judges. Thank you very much. You both did a fantastic job. I know it was very, very difficult, but well done. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate all the work that you put in and how you presented tonight. You did a fantastic job. And thank you also for providing the prize for the trip to Brussels. But most of all, thank you for both the audience and the speakers. It's been a really fantastic night. You're all so enthusiastic and your speeches really, really were excellent. Well done to you all, and thank you for attending.